So when I first started to learn how to dance, actually before I started learning how to dance, again, I would go out and dance. And if you would ask me, what kind of dancing you're doing, I guess I'm doing a freestyle dancing. And I talk to other friends who haven't learned to dance yet, but they're going out to a club, and they'll say, "Oh, I'm going freestyle dancing." And I think it's kind of interesting because when I watch most of these people who go out dancing, uh, they don't have any training, they haven't had any practice or very much practice, and so their dancing is pretty monotonous and boring and predictable. I don't mean to slam anybody. I mean, I was there once myself. Um, if you haven't learned, you haven't learned how to dance. But this freestyle dancing that you're watching out on the floor is really, it's almost free of style, that you can't really, that it doesn't matter what song you pick. That before I learned how to dance, I was pretty much going to dance every song the same way. Well, obviously, once I started learning how to dance, got to a studio, I started learning how to dance, and immediately something happened. I put myself in a box. I actually limited myself even more as to what I could dance. You can only do a certain pattern. And in fact, I went from having no rules in a sense to having like one or two rules. You can do this, and you can do this, and that's it. That was very, very obviously limiting. But I stuck with it, and then I got more rules. Well, now you can do this. Oh, and now you can do this, and you can do this, and you can do this. And I actually, at the end of 3 months, I got invited to a special intense boot camp, and I walked into that boot camp, and in the first hour, it seemed like we broke every single rule that I learned the entire year. Oh, now you can do this, and you can do this, and you can do this, and you can do this. I was getting more and more rules. Now, I still was pretty limited. I had to pretty much stick to the rules I knew. But after a while, after about a year, I noticed that something had started to change. And that whenever I seemed to break from the rules, that something good still happened. That I understood which rules I had to follow all the time and which rules I could sometimes break. And I'm still in that process of discovery, and every dancer, in some sense, is still in that process of discovery. We never ever actually reach that state of perfection where we know every rule, we're supposed to keep it, and when we can actually do a different rule. And so in some sense you can think of when I first started to dance, I was someone outside the law of dance. That was, I was somebody who didn't know, I didn't have any rules, but in fact also didn't really have any freedom to express myself. Given 1,000 songs, I would have danced every single song the same way. Now, once I started to learn how to dance, initially I was kind of in the same boat. I was even more limited. I would still dance 1,000 songs the same way. In fact, there were some songs I wouldn't even dance because I didn't know how to dance in them anymore in some sense. But as I learned more rules, I got more freedom. And now in some sense, I can dance to any song 1,000 different ways. Probably more than 1,000 different ways, in fact. And so all of a sudden, I've gone from being, in some sense, outside the law of dance, to under the law of dance, to above the law of dance. That in some sense, the laws of dance have gone from being unknown to me to being written, in my head, to be written in my heart. And obviously, I think we can see where I'm going with this. That we look at the Christian life. Paul talks about the fact that we're no longer under the law. But we have to contrast that with what Jesus says in the Gospels. First of all, at one point in Matthew 22, he gives us Matthew 19, he gives us the two greatest commandments. Thou shalt love your Lord your God with all your mind, all your heart, and all your strength. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. And that all the law and the prophets are based upon these. On the flip side to that, he also says in Matthew 5 that he did not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it, and that not one bit of the law would pass away, and that if we want to enter the kingdom of heaven, that we need to be more righteous than the scribes and the Pharisees. So really, Jesus comes down and he doesn't get rid of the rules, He really gives meaning to the rules. When you looked at the pagans, in some sense, the pagans were often very limited. Many of the pagans were very limited. They were very simple. Their lives were boring and repetitive. Sin actually is very boring and repetitive. When you get to the Jews had the law. For the longest time, they really didn't understand what the law was for. They understood they needed to follow the law, that God told them to follow the law, but they just followed the law because God told them. In the same way that I follow the rules because my teachers told me to follow the rules. That's why I did it. Now, having learned the rules well, I was now free to let the rules serve me. And so in some sense, what the Christian is looking to do is, having received the grace of Christ in his heart, is to basically live his life with the law serving him. That by understanding the rules of the Christian life, which Christ has not abolished, he's fulfilled, is where we find our true freedom, just as much as the dancer finds his true freedom in understanding the laws of dance, and understanding that dance is made to, the rules are made to serve him. He or she are not made to serve the rules. So when he wrote the Theology of the Body, John Paul II talks about this idea he calls a mature spontaneity, and he ties it much with chastity and purity of heart. But basically, it's the idea that you have to really have have both a proper interior disposition to love someone and manifest the proper exterior actions in loving somebody to authentically love a person. So basically, it's just not enough. You can say all we need is love. It depends what you mean. If you mean it's just the thought that counts, if I just have the intention to love, that in itself is insufficient to love. That in itself lacks spontaneity. That if you want to love, you need the law of Christ written in your heart. Deep down, the whole point of the Christian ethos, which John Paul II calls it the ethos, the way of living, is that it's made for relationship. It's made for healthy, authentic relationships. And if you try to pick and choose the parts you like, it really doesn't work. It's pretty much a package deal. Just as in dance, you just can't pick and choose the one parts you like and the parts that you don't. You have to do all of them as well as you can. It's the same thing in relationships, and that's what the Christian ethos is actually about. And when you actually look at couples who have actually implemented this ethos in your life, I watch them, I'm blown away by just how free and spontaneous they can be in talking to them. That there's an incredible freedom that they have by following these rules. And not because these rules are something that they serve, not because these rules are something that holds them back. In fact, these rules are the source of their happiness and their spontaneity. And so we can see that actually that these things are basically all linked. That really, no matter what we want to do, if we want to be free and spontaneous, we need two things. One, we need the interior intention to do good and to be beautiful and to be loving. And two, we need the skills and the ability to put that into action.